The Princess of the Ice Mountain. Long ago, atop a towering ice mountain shrouded in cold and mystery, stood an ancient golden castle. Inside the castle lived the Ice Mountain Princess, a beautiful and kind-hearted maiden. However, she was trapped in this desolate castle due to a curse cast by a wicked witch. The curse decreed that the princess could only be freed if, within 7 years, a brave man climbed the treacherous ice mountain, plucked a forbidden ice apple, and married her. If no one succeeded, the princess would vanish forever, along with the golden castle. The mountain, covered in slippery ice, posed an almost insurmountable challenge. In front of the castle grew an enchanted ice apple tree with luscious red fruit, guarded fiercely by a vicious eagle. Many suitors had tried their luck, but none returned, and the princess remained imprisoned, her hope fading with each passing year. The journey to the Golden Castle was fraught with danger. The entire mountain was coated in a thick layer of ice, making every step treacherous and uncertain. The freezing winds roared constantly, cutting through even the warmest cloaks and threatening to sweep climbers off the cliffs. At the castle gates stood an enchanted ice apple tree, its branches heavy with glowing red fruit. The apples seemed to beckon challengers with their beauty, but they were fiercely guarded by a monstrous eagle, with its piercing golden eyes and razor-sharp talons. The eagle attacked anyone who dared approach, its terrifying screeches echoing across the mountain. Many brave souls had attempted the climb, hoping to break the curse and free the princess. Yet, the icy path and the eagle's relentless attacks ensured that none survived. Watching from her tower, the princess held on to the faint hope that one day, someone would overcome these challenges. But as the years passed and no one succeeded, her hope began to waver. Time passed quickly, and the 7-year deadline of the curse was drawing near. The Ice Mountain Princess gazed out from her frosty tower, her heart heavy with despair. No one had yet conquered the mountain, and she could feel the weight of her fate pressing down on her. Each day, she watched the icy path below, hoping to catch sight of a brave soul willing to face the perilous journey. But the mountain remained silent, its cold winds carrying no sign of a rescuer. Now, only 3 days remained. The princess felt her hope slipping away like snow melting under the sun. The thought of vanishing forever filled her with sorrow. Yet she clung to a sliver of belief that, even at the last moment, someone might still arrive to save her. As the hours ticked by, the once vibrant glow in her eyes began to dim. The golden castle stood in silence, mirroring the princess's quiet despair. Would this truly be the end of her story? On the second-to-last day, as the sun began to set behind the icy peaks, the princess stood by her tower window, gazing at the desolate landscape. Suddenly, in the distance, she saw movement, a lone figure on horseback, steadily making their way up the treacherous mountain. Her heart leapt with both hope and fear. The rider, dressed in a gleaming cloak, seemed undeterred by the icy winds or the treacherous path. As he drew closer, she could see it was a young prince, his determination clear in every step his horse took. The sight filled her with cautious optimism. Could this be the one to finally break the curse? Yet, doubt lingered in her heart. So many before him had tried and failed. falling victim to the mountain's dangers or the ferocious eagle. The prince reached the foot of the mountain, dismounted, and began his climb on foot. The princess, unable to look away, silently prayed for his safety. For the first time in years, she felt a faint spark of hope, a glimmer that perhaps, just perhaps, her salvation was near. The young prince climbed steadily, his boots crunching against the ice, his hands gripping the jagged edges of the frozen cliff. The cold winds howled around him, but he pressed on, his determination unwavering. From her tower window, the princess watched anxiously, her heart pounding with every step he took. As the prince neared the castle gates, the enchanted ice apple tree came into view, its glowing red fruit gleaming like jewels. But his approach did not go unnoticed. With a piercing screech, the monstrous eagle swooped down from the sky, its talons glinting menacingly in the fading light. The prince drew his sword, prepared for battle. The eagle dove at him, its sharp claws slashing through the air. He ducked just in time and swung his blade. But the creature was quick, evading his strike with ease. The fight was fierce, with the eagle circling and attacking relentlessly, its screeches echoing across the icy mountain. Though the prince fought valiantly, the eagle managed to strike a blow, its talons tearing through his cloak and grazing his shoulder. He stumbled, losing his footing on the slippery ice, and fell backward. The princess gasped as she saw him tumble down the mountainside, disappearing into the snowy abyss. Her heart sank. Was this the end of her last hope? As the sky darkened, she clutched the window ledge, staring into the distance, willing him to rise again. The princess stood frozen at the tower window, her eyes searching the snowy mountainside where the prince had fallen. Her heart was heavy with despair, yet she couldn't tear herself away. Suddenly, amidst the swirling snow, she spotted movement. The prince, battered and bruised, was slowly climbing back up the mountain. His hands, bloodied from the sharp ice, clung to the frozen rocks. His determination burned brighter than the pain coursing through him. Every step was a struggle, but he refused to give up. From the tower, the princess cried out, her voice carrying through the icy winds, begging him to stop and save himself. But the prince didn't waver. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. And for a moment, the princess felt an unspoken promise, a vow that he would not let her down. As the night deepened, the prince pushed onward, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. The path grew more treacherous, but he found strength in the faint light from the castle, a beacon guiding him toward his goal. The princess pressed her hands to her chest, silently praying for his safety. Despite the pain and the cold, the prince rose from the abyss, climbing steadily toward her once more. Hope, faint but unyielding, began to stir in her heart again. The prince climbed higher, his hands raw and bleeding as they gripped the icy rocks. The freezing wind bit into his skin, and exhaustion weighed heavily on him. Yet, he pressed on, his eyes fixed on the golden castle above. The princess, watching his struggle, felt her heart ache for him. She could see the pain etched on his face and the toll the journey was taking on his body. Unable to bear it any longer, She clasped her hands together and whispered a desperate prayer to the heavens. "Please," she pleaded, her voice trembling, "give him the strength to continue. Let the mountain show mercy and guide him to safety." As if in answer, the dark clouds overhead began to shift, and a light drizzle of rain fell upon the mountain. The raindrops trickled into the prince's dry, cracked lips, refreshing him and giving him renewed strength. He paused for a moment, feeling the cool water soothe his burning throat and aching muscles. The princess gasped in relief, tears streaming down her cheeks. She could sense that her prayer had been heard, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that the curse could truly be broken. The prince, now revitalized, resumed his climb with renewed vigor. Each step brought him closer to the castle and to the princess who waited anxiously for him. The mountain seemed less daunting, as if the winds had calmed to watch his ascent. The princess's hope grew stronger with every moment, her heart silently cheering him on. The prince climbed closer to the castle, his eyes fixed on the glowing ice apple tree. But the fearsome eagle was waiting. With a piercing screech, it dove toward him, its sharp talons ready to strike. Dodging swiftly, the prince drew his dagger and faced the creature. The battle was fierce, with the eagle slashing at his armor. But the prince refused to yield. Timing his move perfectly, he struck the eagle's wing, forcing it to retreat with a deafening cry. Breathing heavily, the prince approached the tree and plucked a radiant apple. As he held it, the castle gates slowly opened, and the princess watched in awe, her heart filled with hope. As the castle gates creaked open, a golden light poured out, illuminating the icy mountain. The prince, clutching the radiant ice apple, stepped forward, his breath heavy but determined. Inside the gates, the princess stood waiting, her heart racing as she saw the man who had risked everything to save her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, she felt a surge of hope and gratitude unlike anything she had ever known. The prince crossed the threshold, and the cold air of the mountain seemed to warm. With trembling hands, he offered the apple to the princess. She took it, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "You have broken the curse." At those words, the castle began to transform. The icy walls melted away, revealing a magnificent palace filled with warmth and life. The mountain itself blossomed, its barren slopes turning into lush green forests. The curse was lifted, and the princess was free at last. The prince, still exhausted but smiling, took her hand. Together, they stood in the golden light of the reborn castle. Their journey far from over, but their destiny forever changed. The curse lifted, and the once icy mountain transformed into a lush paradise. Flowers bloomed where snow had once fallen, and the golden castle shone brighter than ever. The princess, free at last, felt a warmth in her heart she hadn't known in years. The prince, though weary from his journey, stood tall beside her. His bravery had not only saved the princess but also restored life to the entire mountain. Villagers from nearby lands, hearing of the miracle, began to gather at the base of the mountain. In the days that followed, a grand celebration was held in the castle. The prince and princess invited everyone to join in their joy. The once empty halls were now filled with laughter, music, and the sounds of a kingdom coming back to life. As they stood together in the great hall, the princess turned to the prince. "You've given me my freedom," she said, her voice soft yet filled with gratitude. "Now, let us create a life where everyone can share in this happiness." The prince smiled, knowing their journey had only just begun. But with the curse broken, a brighter future awaited them both. With the curse lifted, the prince and princess turned their focus to rebuilding the mountain kingdom. The once desolate castle became a vibrant home, filled with warmth and life. The surrounding lands, once barren and frozen, now flourished with green forests and sparkling rivers. The prince and princess worked together tirelessly, inviting villagers to settle in the renewed kingdom. They provided shelter, food, and guidance, ensuring that everyone could share in the prosperity. The people, inspired by the courage of the prince and the kindness of the princess, pledged their loyalty to the new rulers. The princess, now free from her icy prison, often walked among her people, listening to their stories and helping with their needs. The prince trained the villagers in defending their new home, ensuring that no harm could ever threaten their peace again. Their united efforts brought not just prosperity but also hope to the kingdom. The mountain, once feared for its icy dangers, became a symbol of resilience and new beginnings. Together, the prince and princess began to lay the foundation for a future built on courage, compassion, and unity. Just as the kingdom began to flourish, dark clouds gathered over the mountain once more. The wicked witch, furious that her curse had been broken, returned with vengeance in her heart. From her lair deep in the frozen wastelands, she cast a new spell, summoning a blizzard that began to engulf the mountain. The villagers panicked as icy winds howled and snow began to cover their newfound paradise. Crops withered, and the rivers started to freeze. The prince and princess quickly rallied the people, vowing to protect the kingdom. Determined to stop the witch, the prince decided to confront her directly, armed with his sword and the courage that had once helped him break the curse. He prepared for another dangerous journey. The princess, unwilling to stay behind, insisted on joining him. Together, they set off into the storm, their love and determination stronger than the witch's dark magic. The people watched as their rulers disappeared into the blizzard, praying for their safe return. Though fear gripped their hearts, they held on to hope, knowing that the courage of the prince and the wisdom of the princess were their greatest strengths. Through the relentless blizzard, the prince and princess braved the harsh winds and treacherous paths to reach the frozen wastelands where the wicked witch resided. The once lush forests and vibrant lands were now buried under thick layers of ice and snow, transformed by the witch's dark magic. At the heart of the wastelands, they found the witch's lair, a towering spire of jagged ice, glowing with an eerie blue light. As they approached, the ground beneath their feet cracked and shifted, revealing traps of ice spikes and frozen chasms. Yet, they pressed on, determined to save their kingdom. The witch, perched high in her icy tower, watched them with a sinister grin. "You dare to challenge me again?" she cackled, her voice echoing through the frozen air. She summoned shards of ice and sent them hurtling toward the pair. The prince skillfully deflected the ice with his sword, while the princess used her wit to guide them safely through the witch's traps. Together, they climbed the icy tower, their bond of love and trust giving them the strength to face the witch's wrath. As they reached the top, the witch unleashed her most powerful spell, a swirling storm of ice and darkness. But the prince and princess stood their ground, ready to confront the source of the kingdom's suffering and bring an end to the witch's reign of terror. At the top of the icy tower, the prince and princess faced the wicked witch. Her twisted form radiated power, and her cold, piercing gaze bore into them. "You fools," she sneered. "You dare defy me? This mountain will be your grave." With a wave of her hand, the witch summoned a blinding storm of ice and lightning. The winds roared, and shards of ice flew through the air like daggers. The prince shielded the princess, his sword cutting through the frozen projectiles as he advanced toward the witch. The princess, quick-witted and brave, noticed a glowing crystal embedded in the center of the tower. She realized it was the source of the witch's power. "The crystal," she cried. "Destroy it, and her magic will end." The witch, hearing her, turned her wrath toward the princess. But the prince, with a roar of determination, leaped forward to block the attack. He fought fiercely, dodging the witch's spells and inching closer to the crystal. Summoning all his strength, the prince plunged his sword into the glowing crystal. The tower trembled violently as cracks spread across its icy walls. The witch screamed, her power unraveling as the crystal shattered into pieces. In a final act of desperation, the witch lunged at the prince. But the princess stepped forward, holding up the enchanted ice apple she had kept. Its radiant glow repelled the witch, who shrieked one last time before dissolving into a swirl of snow and disappearing forever. The storm ceased, and a warm light spread across the sky. The witch's lair began to crumble. But the prince and princess, hand in hand, descended the tower safely, their victory marking the end of the witch's reign. As the witch's magic dissolved, the icy wastelands began to thaw. The dark clouds lifted, revealing a bright, golden sun that bathed the mountain in warmth. The snow melted, giving way to lush greenery and vibrant flowers that bloomed across the slopes. Rivers that had been frozen solid now flowed freely, bringing life back to the land. The prince and princess descended the mountain together, their hearts filled with relief and triumph. When they returned to their kingdom, the villagers, who had feared the worst, erupted into cheers of joy. The prince raised his sword high, declaring that the witch's evil was gone forever and that their kingdom was free. The people celebrated their return, gathering in the newly flourishing fields for a grand festival. The princess stood before them, her voice steady and kind. "This victory is not just ours," she said. "It belongs to all of you who believed in hope, even in the darkest times. Together, we have reclaimed our home." The kingdom, once shadowed by despair, now thrived as a place of joy and prosperity. The mountain, once feared as a cursed and desolate place, became a symbol of resilience and renewal. The prince and princess, united in love and courage, were hailed as the saviors of the land. Though their journey had been fraught with danger, They knew it was not the end but the beginning of a new era of peace and harmony for their people.